Hi, and welcome to The Social Angle, a podcast that helps promo pros gain an edge in the social media realm. I'm Vinny, and on this episode, I am joined by former ASI interns and current professional journalists Rachel Ramirez and Andrea Miller to discuss what they're doing now, skills they learned during their internship, the role social media plays in their jobs, and much more. Rachel, Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So great to be here.
Yes, I appreciate you guys taking your some time out of your schedule. So before we get started, can you both give a brief introduction of who you are, when you were an intern at ASI, and what you're doing now in your professional lives? Rachel, let's start with you.
Yeah, my name is Rachel Ramirez. I am currently based in New York City. I was an ASI intern. I think it was 2018. I think it is 2018, and I am currently a writer slash reporter at CNN covering climate change. So everything, all things climate change, related.
And you, Andrea?
Yeah, my name's Andrea Miller. I'm a video journalist with CNBC Digital Video. I'm on the markets and politics team, which is also now the markets, politics, and climate team. So I also do some climate coverage. But technically, my title is producer. But when I'm introducing myself, I just say video journalist because producer is so vague, and I do so many different things
Right.
under that title. So yeah, I pitch stories, I write the stories, I write the scripts, I do the reporting, I do the interviewing, I do the editing, and I do the shooting. Wearing a lot of different hats, but I was an intern with ASI in 2017, right after I graduated college.
Okay. All right. So both of you are pretty much 21st century journalists, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, talking about wearing a lot of hats. We'll get into that. Um, But yeah, so you're both journalists at large multinational cable news organizations. What has been the biggest challenge working for these businesses, and how have you been able to adapt? I'm going to start with you, Andrea, on this one.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me getting into covering sort of just national, like from a national angle into business news is the challenge, right? Just trying to encompass so many different nuances of different industries, and trying to distill like what's truly the most important thing the audience has to know about a subject into a 10 to 15 minute sort of mini documentary deep dive explainer video. So trying to cover a lot of things in a little amount of time, just trying to keep people's interest engaged in the video format, especially with business journalism, which does not lend itself to video like maybe some other
Right.
forms of journalism. So really trying to rely on the visuals I can while still keeping the audience there with me while telling the story of whatever it might be. I cover so many different things.
And your audience is global, correct?
Yeah, there is also that at any given time, I really don't know who may be clicking on my video
Sure.
on the CNBC YouTube channel. So sometimes we'll look at the statistics to see where our audience is coming to us from. Most of it is from the United States, but if I do a story speaking to a specific region of the world, I will see that there's a pickup in viewers from where I'm talking about.
Sure. Sure. All right, Rachel, how about you?
I would say for me is just generally getting people interested in science. So, I mean, climate change over the years has become such as, a political topic, and being in an organization like CNN where politics is sort of the forefront of our coverage, we always have to write a lot of our climate stories with a scientific approach so that, we have that evidence that climate change is happening, and attributing that to a bunch of extreme weather events that's unfolding across the US. And I think a challenge as part of that is, how do we tell that story to the larger audience that doesn't really, that aren't in tune with, the climate, so-called climate landscape. In my previous roles, I was able to do enterprise feature stories, kind of longer form stories,
Sure.
about climate change and environmental justice, and a lot of those stories. Um, but now it's kind of like a faster pace where, I have to keep up with breaking news and then write a
Sure.
story within an hour, and turn it around, calling people. And then on top of that, telling the story, this tough story of climate change in a way that would, interest our audience, in a way that would be impactful, and in a way that delivering it in a way that they would understand in
Sure.
like
Sure.
a layperson's terms. So that's kind of the most challenging part.
What is there a and I'll throw this out to both of you. Was there a big learning curve in getting into the niches that you're both in? Rachel, I'll start with you.
Um, yeah, I guess I mean, Drea knows this, and I used to be a business reporter. That was kind of my initial trajectory. I think after ASI, I went straight to Financial Times, and so I was a business reporter. And I think that was when I started kind of, I think I started looking into the fossil fuel industry more, like oil and gas markets. And then I learned, and I've always had like environmental stories and climate stories in the backdrop of my mind, just because of where I was born, which is in the Pacific Island, and just my interest has always aligned with these stories. And then, like after the Financial Times, I got a fellowship at GRIS, which is more of a smaller nonprofit, but focused on climate and environmental stories. And so our audience was very knowledgeable and specific about this very beat that we're in. And I think spending time in GRIS, I think I was there for 2 years, and just being there and learning from my fellow reporters and writers there, and editors, and talking to a lot of scientists and experts in the field really helped me grow as a climate reporter and learn, the science behind all of this. I didn't need a meteorology or weather background.
Sure.
I just which helps because if I don't understand something like a weather jargon, I can be like, what does that mean? Like, how would
Sure.
you explain that to like a 5-year-old? So I mean that helps. And but I guess both the beats, the business environmental beats really went hand in hand for me.
Okay.
It translated over the other.
Well, it's nice to hear that you're writing about something that aligns with some of your interests. Now, Andrea, let me ask you about um, your role. Was there a learning curve in what you're doing now? I've seen you do some fun videos, like you did a video with Philly having teams in the championships, and you did a fun video. So it seems like you're able to have some fun with what you're doing. But for the most part, was there a learning curve when you joined the company that you're with now?
Yeah, definitely. From each company that I've worked with, we just have used all different software. So for me as a video editor as well, like having to learn how to use Premiere Pro all over again because I didn't exactly learn that in college. So, and then when I was at ABC before I was with CNBC, we were using Avid. So sort of just like truly learning the technology that I need to be using to deliver the
Okay.
stories in the format that I use. Strictly speaking on that, there was a learning curve. And then there's also just a learning curve with when I first started with CNBC, I was an associate producer on our news and programming team. So I dealt a lot with the news of the day, lots of breaking news, and keeping up with what was happening on CNBC television and getting that online as well. So just the learning how they talk on the television and then how to translate that into something that would live in a digital space, because CNBC TV is a lot different than CNBC online, and just sort of like bridging that gap, and just sitting in front of the TV and watching them on CNBC talk about stocks and what the market's doing. That was very new to me. I
Hmm.
had not done that before. Certainly not in the ABC News digital environment. So that was a huge learning curve, just basic
Sure.
stock market stuff. I did not study finance in college. I didn't even study journalism in college. I studied production.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's where, so also just learning how to write an article was something I learned in my internship with ASI, really, because that wasn't necessarily something that I was focused on while I was in school.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
mostly
It's fascinating where people end up. I'm actually a journalist by education. I went to Penn State University, got a journalism degree, so I'm very familiar with what you guys do. I just never became a traditional journalist after college. I went into online. I was doing more production work, and I do some journalism. Like this, I consider journalism. I'm interviewing you guys, but certainly didn't do what you guys are doing now for these large companies. But it's interesting that you mentioned, Andrea, that there's a learning curve in the technical areas of what you guys do. And I think, going back 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, journalists didn't really have to worry about stuff like that. And we'll get into the 21st century journalists, people who now are working in the digital area, and they want to be self-sufficient. They want to be able to do everything, and they have to learn a lot of the new technologies that revolve around digital. So again, we're talking to Rachel, Andrea, former ASI interns, now professional journalists. So let me ask you guys about some of the lessons you took, and I think Andrea, you just mentioned this, the lessons you took from your ASI internship into your professional work as journalists. And I'll start with you, Andrea.
Yeah, learning how to write an article. um, Crazy. I mean, that I didn't really get to do that when I was in school because
Right.
my major at Temple University was media studies and production. And while I did learn a lot of like basic communication skills, unlearning the Oxford comma was something I came into
Yeah.
in entering the journalism field. But definitely at ASI, I learned a lot about just like writing for like a magazine format as well as in
Sure.
addition to the website, because had certainly never written for any sort of like published column, sort of like newspaper. Again, didn't study journalism, so
Right.
never did any of that. So learned a lot and just getting my feet wet in that, and learned a lot about promotional products. And I still, to
Of
this
course.
day, when I see like a promo product, I see
Same.
the code and I'm like, I know what that is. Does anyone else know what this is? It makes me so excited.
That's funny. I went to a brewery not long ago and I bought a mug that, had their logo on it. And I turned it over and it literally had the numbers on it, the ASI number. I was like, I know what that means. I was like, nobody on this planet knows what that means except for a handful of people. And I was like, I know what that means. And my wife was laughing at me. She's like, oh, you're such a nerd. I'm like, yeah, I've been in this industry for 15 years. I hope I know that. Um, but anything else, Andrea, about lessons that you took from ASI? I know you spoke about the learning how to write an article. Anything else?
I think the biggest thing really is just that I learned that a career in this field is what you make it. So what felt interested in while I was at ASI and pitching those sorts of stories and then writing them up and just sort of like following that instinct of, well, okay, here's what I'm interested in. Maybe someone else is interested in this. And doing that during my time at ASI is definitely something that I brought forward into just the rest of my career from there, is just sort of taking that time to make something of my opportunity that I was given with ASI. So just sort of continuing to follow that instinct, and yeah, yeah,
That's
that's
great. That's
it.
great. All right, Rachel, now you.
Yeah, I think that second half that Andrea said was is really a big thing to me. Like the way I crafted my internship at ASI, and Teresa was such an incredible editor. She helped me grow as a writer, I think, over that summer, and she was so kind to let me go out of and kind of pursue my own kind of angles and stories. Like I think I remember one event that I remember going to was the Pride Parade in Philly and just spotting all the promotional products and the boots. But yeah, I think Teresa really helped me grow as a writer. And I mean, I'm not like Andrea, where like I've always had a newspaper and digital background, but I think ASI was my first kind of magazine style writing. I've
Sure.
always been in the like newsy space. Like this is how to write a story with like news first, inverted pyramid, and then all the other details in at the bottom. But at ASI, like it was really like a magazine style writing, and I was really just glad to go away, leave my internship with a cover story, which was really exciting. Just seeing my story in the cover, and then just like seeing my name and plastered in that cover
Yeah,
story. So, but really, just the writing style is like the biggest thing for me, and I really valued Teresa's help with her editing and the feedback that she
sure.
gave me throughout that.
So you're more of a feature style writer now, currently?
No, I'm kind of both, mostly
Okay,
news because CNN is mostly a news
okay,
kind of driven organization. So I do a lot of breaking news, but when I do always have feature stories in the back
sure.
burner that I'm working on
Yeah.
constantly that I keep having to put off.
Well, that's great to hear, and I'm sure that Teresa will hear this, and I'm sure she's beaming. But yeah, a lot of great editors here that you can learn from. Michelle Bell, obviously, Teresa.
Yeah.
We have a good um, roster of editors and writers here. So I'm glad that you guys took some lessons from your internship, and you're carrying them into your professional jobs. Now, I have to ask you about your social media work because I notice you guys on social media. I follow you on Twitter. You both follow me, so I kind of see what you guys post. I got wind of what sorry, not Teresa, Andrea was doing when the Phillies were in the World Series. Through her Twitter account. So you're both obviously active for your respective employers. Can you tell us that the role social media plays in your current job? For instance, is it required to have a presence on Twitter representing the business, or are you doing that, as a supplement to, what the brand's doing? Like, can you tell me just like how much they expect you to use social media and what you do? I'm going to start with you, Rachel.
Yeah, I don't think it's expected as much at CNN, but I think just seeing a bunch of journalists present on Twitter specifically, it's like a big journalism hub, kind of, I wouldn't say force, for lack of a better word, kind of really made me create my own Twitter, and having a Twitter presence really kind of amplifies your own kind of credibility as a journalist, I would say. Because that's, at least for me, it's one of the first places I look at if I want to find other journalists in the space, or even jobs. There's a lot of job prospects for journalists on Twitter, which is really helpful. And I know I'm talking about Twitter against the backdrop of what's happening internally with Elon Musk and all that. So it's
Right.
really like a huge moment of what's happening at Twitter, because it's been such a great tool for journalists, especially, at least personally for me. It's where I found a lot of my sources.
Right.
Like if Hurricane Ian, when it happened in September, I was scrambling to find people who were impacted. And Twitter was the one place where I found a bunch of sources. I would just reply to, if they're tweeting about it, I would reply, "Hey, I'm a reporter with CNN. Can we talk?" or whatever. So I think, one, it's a great vehicle to find sources. And then two, it's also a platform for myself to self promote my stories and the stories that I work on, and to garner that engagement, audience engagement, for my stories. And so it's really for that main purpose. But also, as journalists, we also have to um, uphold sort of the same ethics and guidelines that we do in our own stories, where we can't take position, at least, we
Sure.
can't take positions in social media, or else we get in trouble. But so we have to just stay in that kind of neutral.
Sure, sure. So it's interesting that you're using the social networks to mine for information, look for sources, which I suspected you guys do that. I mean, we do that as well. It makes life a lot easier, especially in this digital world that we live in. Um, but Rachel, you mentioned about being neutral when you're representing the brand on social media. Now, is that monitored? Is somebody watching what you guys do, or are you pretty much rogue? You could do what you want until some feedback gets back to the company, and like they have to kind of shut you
Well,
down.
I just have to be super careful because, well, Andrea and I are both verified, and so that comes with a different
Hmm.
kind of status, where you can quickly gain traction. You can a tweet, whatever you tweet can just quickly go viral.
Sure.
And so, and because I'm a reporter at CNN, like that carries a whole nother layer where, in this political landscape, with where it's like fake news, and it brings in another layer of like social attacks
Sure.
towards
Sure.
reporters and journalists. And so uh, one, I just have to be careful for my own personal safety and not to kind of, take stands. And I will say that climate change is not a stand, even though it's become such a political thing. We have the scientific evidence to back it, so that's not really. Even though a lot of people on social would reply to my to my
Right.
tweets and be like, "Climate change is a hoax," da, 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 da. But I don't think I can. I don't want to. I choose not to go rogue on
Right. Right.
social media, and also like I don't want to seem unprofessional or whatever,
Sure.
because it is a professional setting for me.
Okay. All right, Andrea, your
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with everything Rachel said. For me, I definitely don't want it to ever seem like I have some sort of bias one way or another. I need to make sure that, my audience can trust that I'm coming to the story from a place of just wanting the truth and not trying to prove some sort of agenda one way or another. And I definitely use Twitter similarly, finding sources, making sure that I'm also just like keeping up with the journalist community that is there on Twitter, which has been a wonderful place to be. And it's going to be interesting to see where Twitter goes from here. Besides Twitter, I am starting to use Instagram more to try to find sources, which has been interesting. That hadn't usually been my like social media choice for that, but it is with the I guess Instagram Reels and using sort of that vertical video sort of had leads for me in that sense as a video editor, but also on vertical video and just using that new format in social media has been an interesting use of my journalism skills. It's like we used to do something completely different with vertical video maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's evolving, it's changing, and we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So I always have social media in mind when I am editing, and especially when I'm about to publish. I'm like, okay, what little clips here would be good on social media,
Right.
like a 30-second clip with like a graphic or something. And then also like what you saw of my Phillies vertical video that I made for CNBC, just truly, I saw that we had a reporter that was talking about that correlation. And I'm like, hey, my dad has like all this Philly stuff. Do you want me to like go be a dork in front of like his memorabilia and like do something for TikTok, Instagram? Like I can. And they were like, yes, because we're trying to figure out sort of what works and what doesn't, like what our audience wants to see with vertical video, especially
Sure.
YouTube Shorts now. That's picking up now too.
Mhm.
Yep.
All trial and error with figuring out what video works on social media right now, which is very fun.
Yeah. So it's fascinating that you mentioned Instagram. Are you finding that you're able to tap in any other networks for your job, or is it really Twitter, Instagram? Are you leveraging any other social networks for your position?
I love LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah.
I just truly like going on there and just like seeing what
Yeah.
folks are doing, and I always share my content on there too.
Okay.
And yeah, I try to whenever I have a video go up, I do the cross-platform. Got to
Sure.
post on
Sure.
Twitter, got to post on Instagram and LinkedIn, and then I'll also use Facebook, but my Facebook is definitely more of like a personal
Right.
avenue for me. But I'll still sort of go on there. I definitely don't use it as much, but all the moms in my life want to see.
Right.
What we're
Right.
up to.
It's more of a personal, connection vehicle. I don't use Facebook as much as I used to. But Rachel, I'll ask you the same question. Obviously, you're using Twitter a lot. Are you using any other networks?
Yeah, I mean, I use Instagram, but I'm definitely not as like, um, I don't post a lot on my Instagram than I do Twitter in terms of promoting my work. I'm not as good as Andrea, and I do find Reels and TikTok very challenging. I always have to like ask my Gen Z little sister, I'm like, "Hey, like, is this something that your generation would, like, find interesting?" And she always, like, gives me, like, the cool buzzwords now because 'cause I'm like, I'm, like, definitely getting older because I can't keep up with, like, the new changes, and I tried to make my own obviously, I have my own personal TikTok, I tried to make my own professional TikTok, and I made a video. It didn't take off, and I'm like, How do I even do this? Like, it's
Right,
so
right.
difficult." But one thing that I help out with the at CNN Climate Instagram a lot. So a lot of the stories that we put on the vertical stories we do, um, sometimes I would go attend like a youth climate strike or a climate event, and I would just like take videos of myself and post it in their kind of live stream, not live streaming, sorry, covering whatever is happening, keeping our followers up to date. And then I would ask youth climate activists to take over our Instagram instead because I think that's
Okay.
more interesting than
Yeah.
me. So, but yeah, those are just like the few platforms, and I also barely go to Facebook, so
Yeah, I think
that's only for family.
yeah.
Stay in touch with family.
I think we're all in the same boat with Facebook. I think Facebook is a very good tool for groups. I think that's from a business perspective, that's where the value lies. Other than that, I'm not really, sold on what it used to be. It's certainly not that anymore. Um, anyway, a couple more questions. I think we answered this one. I think both of you can agree that social media is a very important tool for 21st century journalists. I don't think there's any denying that, especially in this digital world that we live in, our sources are at our fingertips. So I have to ask you this question. Can you tell us your proudest or craziest moment as a professional? I'll start with you, Andre, on this one.
That's an excellent question. Um, I feel like proudest and craziest are two different things. I
You
think,
can give me both. Yeah.
okay, proudest is just making that transition to working from home and like figuring out how to do this job from my house
Hmm.
was definitely something I'm really proud of, especially when we couldn't go out on shoots any longer because of the pandemic. It was just not safe to get out there with our cameras and do so. So trying to use like even just my iPhone, like in my house, trying to figure out like what I can do to just be creative. Like I think I set up like a desk before and like had my camera on top and then tried to film like me like writing on paper just in with my iPhone. So just kind of being really scrappy about video production from home is just something I felt really proud about. Definitely just making working from home work for me has been really cool.
Okay.
And I think just craziest would be the number of celebrities I physically ran into when I worked at ABC News. Like I was like running back to my edit suite from the bathroom because I was on deadline, and I ran into Stormy Daniels.
Okay.
It was like, oh my god, I'm so, like I opened the door and I was like, ugh, I am so sorry, and her lawyer as well, Michael Avenatti. I was like, oh hi. I did the same with Bob Saget. I was like, excuse me, sir. Please I need to get through this hallway. Just
Yeah.
like random,
Right. Right.
random celebrities where I was just like, what the heck?
Huh.
Is my edit suite was right next to the View
Okay.
dressing room, so they always walked by. So just
Okay.
a number of sightings that was just weird
Yeah,
and
you're in New York, or you were in New York City. I'm sure that
yes.
that's going to continue. So yeah, proud. I like that. You figured it out working from home, and you've got some crazy moments to share as well. Rachel, your turn.
Yeah, I have one major thing that comes to mind, which is, I guess, both craziest, and I don't know if it's proudest, but it could be, I guess, is when Donald Trump Jr. quote retweeted one of my
Oh,
tweets, which is probably the craziest thing ever because it was more of a bashing type of tweet, and I got a bunch of like right wing trolls come at me.
hmm,
And I was already at CNN at the time, so this is when like a lot of my PR team started helping me. But basically, and this goes, I think, to our conversation earlier about not showing any bias on
Right.
Twitter, and staying neutral. I think I kind of shifted a little, but I don't know. It was a question that I tweeted, and I'm just going to tell everyone anyway, which is that I tweeted something like, this was when Elon was going to buy Twitter. And I tweeted something like, what would $44 billion have done for the climate crisis?
Hmm.
Which is a genuine question,
Sure. Sure.
at least to me, but a lot of people took it the wrong way, including Mr. Trump Jr. And so that tweet went viral.
Okay.
Even like right wing media started writing about me. CNN writer, CNN reporter tweets da 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 da, and I
Huh.
was like, oh
Interesting.
my god.
Interesting.
And so it was just like this crazy, crazy thing. I forget what Trump Jr. said, but it was something like, "Oh, you're right. The shareholders at Twitter should, you know, invest something $44 billion into climate change or something like that. Not Elon, but like I don't know,
Right. Right. Right.
something like that. But it definitely sent a bunch of nasty,
Okay.
negative
Yeah.
responses down my Twitter, which I had to kind of mute in a way,
Right.
just for my own mental
When
health.
was this? How long ago was this?
It was when Elon announced that he was going to buy Twitter, which is
Okay. So several
April.
months
Correct
ago.
me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Good or bad, they say there's no such thing as bad PR. But I think in the digital age, it's tough when you have to kind of deal with the trolls. I've never dealt with something, that extensive. I'm sure that when, you probably woke up or you saw a million notifications and you're probably like, oh my God, what happened? And then you look and it's like it's blowing up
I
and
think, yeah, I think what's good thing is that I'm just so lucky to have such a supportive team. Like, I think thinking back, if I was still at like a smaller news organization, I probably wouldn't have that kind of legal PR support because of resources. But
sure.
because, I'm under the umbrella of CNN, I had like that legal support in case anything happens,
Right. Right. And that's great. So proudest, craziest, it's however you want to look at it. That's certainly a crazy story. So before we go, I want to ask you guys one last question. What advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about becoming a professional journalist? And Rachel, I'm going to start with you in this one.
Yeah, I think my biggest advice is to just read, diversify, your news diet, whether that's TV, newspapers, radio. But I think the biggest thing for me is really to read and consume as much, not just news stories, but just news in general and learn about the world, what's going on, what's happening. And the second part to that is just making connections. If you really want to move up in the industry, it's really important to make connections and maintain relationships with, journalists that you meet. Like I still, we're talking right now where we've been, you know, our ASI relationship goes back to 2018, 2017, and we're still
Sure.
connected. And so just maintaining those relationships is really important because, you'll never know what, those relationships might foster.
Sure. I mean, you guys are here because, I still follow you on Twitter and, it's great that you guys had a chance to come on here. Andrea, what about
Yeah,
you?
I agree with everything Rachel said, and I think just be persistent and stay determined. You'll hear no more than you hear yes, whether that be for the job itself or from a source you're trying to interview. And when you hear no from the source, it usually means you're on to something. That's always my favorite advice is listen carefully to the no. So and I mean, just learn what you don't know. Like, keep open to the fact that there's probably way more to something you don't know yet, and that's always helpful in telling a story as well. But
Okay.
and in this environment, just like take care of yourself. If you want to be a
Yeah.
professional journalist, it is a struggle out there for so many. So prioritize your mental health, and stay prepared for a little bit of struggle, but stay true to your voice and the stories you want to tell, because if you think something's a little weird, a little off, or you're interested in it, I'm going to say there's a good chance a lot of other folks are too. So
Right. Great advice. We did get a comment come through. It says it's from ASI, so I'm thinking it's one of our editors who is, using Facebook as the brand. So the question was, what was your favorite part of your ASI internship? Um, Andrea, I'm gonna ask you this first.
Um, I think that I remember we did like a huge like photo shoot.
I was gonna say the same thing.
This was
That
just
was
this
gonna be
huge,
my favorite too.
and I just remember that so vividly. And just like that part of the work, just doing the huge photo shoot was really fun. But like the little things are taking a pink starburst every single time I left the office. Out of that jar that was like by
Right,
the
right.
door. I always took a little pink starburst, and also all of the Reese's peanut butter cups in Michelle's office.
Oh, nice. Yes.
I remember the candy.
The candy. I like that. One of your favorite memories from
The
ASI
things that
is,
you find in
yeah,
Michelle's office.
Yes, Michelle's
there's,
snacks. Thanks, Michelle.
yes, and the alcohol too, but you didn't hear that from me.
That's what I was saying.
Um, all right, Rachel, I know you agree with the photo shoot.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, definitely the photo shoot, and I think just hanging out with the fellow interns in other departments was really fun, getting to know them. I know we had a lot of, time spent together throughout that summer, and I think, some of us are still good friends and, like, we still kind of talk, on socials, but, yeah, just the relationships.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time today. It's certainly appreciated. I'm glad to hear that both of you are doing well. You've moved on to some really cool gigs. I wish you the best going forward. Now, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, can you guys let us know your Twitter handles? Rachel, I'll start with you.
Yes, my Twitter handle is Rach, RACHJU. Ramirez, Ramirez is my last name. Hopefully that was clear enough.
All right, Andrea.
Yeah, my I have a very easy Twitter handle. It's just Andrea CNBC. That's it.
There you go,
Just at
Andrea.
Andrea
Someone
CNBC.
took my at Rachel Ramirez, so I was kind of pissed about that. And she's inactive. He, she, they.
Oh, I hate when that
Mine
happens.
used to be Andrea Jazz Miller because my middle name's Jasmine. But I just wanted to make it as short as I could, so I just did that.
Yeah.
But I am at Drea Jazz, like JAZZ on Instagram as well.
Oh yeah, my Instagram's at Rachel Reports, so that's
Okay.
easier.
I didn't want to get into all the platforms, but if you guys want to throw that out there, totally cool. But again, thank you for your time today. This has been a great conversation. For Rachel and Andrea, I'm Vinny. See you next time on the social angle.
Yay,